Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I'm Robbie Rhino and today's video is all about the TVP T50-51-51, which is the Cold War version of the TVP T50-51. It's an Eastern Alliance medium tank in Era 1 of the Cold War game mode. It leads on from the Škoda T50 and it leads to the TR580, which is the first Czech tank you'll get in Era 2 of the Cold War game mode. So today's video we are going to be looking at the stats of the TVP T50-51. We're going to be comparing it to the M48 A5P1, the Centurion 5.1 and the Object 165 because all of these tanks are similar in terms of their gun caliber and their hit points, and it's a good indication of how the TVP T50-51 holds up. It's a tank that has a 100mm gun, the same 100mm gun you have on the Škoda T50. However, you now have a 4-shot autoloader with a 1.71 second intra-clip reload, meaning you can do 1280 damage in 5.13 seconds, so it's a very good ambush tank and very good for picking off tanks that are on low hit points. So we're going to start with the stats of the tank, then we're going to have a look at the difference between the Škoda T50 and the TVP T50-51. Then we're going to look at my commander and equipment setup, how that changes the stats of this tank and how I like to play it. We'll have a quick look at the armor profile and then we'll get stuck right into the gameplay. I've got 3 of them for you today to demonstrate how this tank performs. So the TVP has 1900 hit points, which as you can see is the worst in this comparison, but not by an awful lot, only by 150. The highest goes to the Centurion 5.1 at 2050 hit points, but you've got plenty of hit points in Era 1 and that's more than enough to take a few shots and keep you in the game. Next we look at the view range, which is 440 meters. This is a pretty terrible stat for the TVP. It actually has gone down from the Škoda T50. So if you really wanted to be able to spot for yourself with the vision mechanics, you can boost this up. However, I focus all of my attention to the DPM and the gun because of the true vision system, and I'm going to be playing like a mid-range support tank. So 440 meter view range, pretty poor. The best in this comparison, or joint best, is the M48 A5P1 and the Cent 5.1. They have 475 meters view range, so pretty poor view range, but the hit points isn't too bad at all. And now we're going to come on to the mobility, and that's a fantastic aspect of this tank. As you can see, almost everything is covered in green, meaning it's best in class in terms of this comparison we're looking at here between these 4 tanks. You have a 1000 horsepower engine, a 25 power to weight ratio, and you can go 60 kilometers an hour forwards and 25 kilometers an hour in reverse. Your whole traverse is 44 degrees a second, which is very nice indeed. The only downside is your turret traverse at 28 degrees a second, which you can boost up with gun handling skills, and I have done. As you can see, I now have a 33.23 degrees a second turret traverse. However, you do have to bear that in mind when you're locking on tanks and circling them, or you're trying to get your gun round. Sometimes it can catch you out, so it's definitely something to watch out for. But you can see that you do have the best top forward and reverse speed, the best whole traverse, the best engine power and power to weight, 25 horsepower per ton for a fairly large profile medium tank is very nice indeed, and you have no problems getting across the battlefield. And as you can see, it definitely blasts the opponents in terms of this comparison. Now we're going to come on to the guns of all these tanks, and as I have said earlier, the TVP has the exact same 100mm gun that you have on the Škoda T50, so the same penetration at 248 on your standard APCR rounds, 310mm on your premium heat rounds, and 50mm of penetration on your HE rounds, and they deal the same damage as the Škoda T50, 320 for your standard and premium rounds and 420 if you load the HE, and the shell velocities are all the same as the Škoda T50 as well, 1400 meters a second, which is not too bad at all, pretty nice for sniping at mid to long ranges. So 1400 meters a second on your standard APCR rounds and 900 meters a second on your heat and your HE. When we're looking at it in this comparison compared to the other tanks, you can see that on the standard APCR rounds it does slightly fall behind the M48, the Cent 5.1 and the Object 165, which has 1500 1,535 meters a second, but in all honesty, 1,400 meters a second is more than enough, and it's not too bad at all. In terms of the heat shell velocity, it's 900 meters a second, which is the worst in this comparison, but only by a little bit, about 273 meters a second, I should say, on the M48, and about 400 meters a second less than the Centurion 5.1, because that has APDS as its premium ammunition choice. However, the HE does have fairly nice shell velocity at that 900 meters a second, same as the Object 165, and only a little bit behind the Centurion 5.1, whereas the HE on the M48 is fantastic at 1,100. But in all honesty, I carry full APCR because heat isn't too useful, apart from it doesn't lose penetration over distance. It's easier to use in Era 1, so you might want to consider taking a couple magazines worth of heat if you are struggling to penetrate at long ranges, but I prefer the nice shell velocity on these APCR rounds, and I find that the penetration of 248mm is more than enough to use in Era 1 of the Cold War game mode. I can see that I haven't actually coloured in the differences between, so we'll go through that now. 248mm, you can see that that is the worst in this comparison, so let's put that in red there. The best penetration in this comparison goes to the M48 and the Cent 5.1. They have 268mm of penetration, and 264mm on the Object 165 is somewhere in between. In terms of the premium penetration, you can see here that the heat rounds on the M48 are absolutely insane at 350mm of penetration. That's best in class. 330 on the heat of the Object 165 is the next best, so that's going to be highlighted in orange. And in terms of the Centurion 5.1, 300mm of APDS, so better shell velocity, but it does have a slightly worse pen than the heat rounds on the TVP, so that is going to be the worst in this comparison. We'll highlight that one in red, and we'll highlight the TVPs in orange. And lastly, with the HE rounds, you can see that the HE on the M48 is a fantastic 210mm of penetration, the same as the Cent 5.1 that has HESH rounds, meaning they're very high penetration HE rounds. So those are the joint best in this comparison, which we'll highlight in green because I have to get this done, otherwise I'll be very, very annoyed. And the Object 165 and the TVP are the joint worst at 50mm of penetration, but like I say, I carry full APCR, so it shouldn't be too much of a problem there. So you can see there that the best penetration does go to the M48 A5P1, but like I say, 248, only 20mm less than your standard rounds than the M48 and the Centurion 5.1, and it's only a little bit less than the Object 165's 264mm, so not too bad at all. In terms of the alpha damages, the Cent 5.1 and the M48 have 390 on their standard and premium rounds because they have a 105mm gun, whereas the Object 165 and the TVP have 100mm guns. But bear in mind that this is a 4-shot autoloader here on the TVP, so it's definitely different in play style, and it's a different kind of danger on the battlefield. Now we're going to go to the gun handling and the DPM, and as you can see here, the best DPM goes to the M48 at 1.9 seconds. However, although it's joint worst at 2.1 seconds, with the Cent 5.1, 2.1 seconds of aim time isn't too bad at all, and with gun handling skills and your equipment, you're going to get that to a very nice level indeed. So I've got mine down to 1.97 seconds, under 2 seconds. The best goes to the M48 here at 1.9 seconds, and the Object 165 at 2 seconds, so pretty much the same as the Cent 5.1 and the TVP. In terms of the accuracy, the worst is actually the M48, so something is worse on that tank than the other ones. 0.35 on the TVP isn't quite as bad as 0.36, but it's definitely not as good as the 0.34 on the Object 165, and the best in this comparison, the Cent 5.1 at 0.32, but again, you can get that down to a very good level since 6.0 and the commander sort of skills were changed in how they are used. Then if you have a 9-skill commander, you're going to be able to get these numbers down to very nice levels indeed. I now have a 0.23 accuracy. In terms of DPM, as it's an autoloader, I was expecting it to be pretty poor, but it's actually not too bad once you get the top gun, which you have to grind out after everything else, which is very frustrating. It costs 2 million. It's almost not worth it, but with it you do boost up your DPM a little bit. So your DPM is 1994. As you can see, the other tanks in this comparison as single shotguns blow this out of the water, but you can boost that up if you choose the right equipment and commander setup, and I'll show you mine in just a bit. You reload your 4 shells in 33.4 seconds, so you're going to have to find cover whilst you are reloading, or make sure you have support, and it's definitely good tank to play in platoons and have people to cover you whilst you are reloading. In terms of how many ammunition you have or how many shells you have, 48 shells. Worst in this comparison, the best is the Cent 51 at 70, but it's very comparable to the M48 and the Object 165. In terms of gun depression, not quite the best, but 8 degrees is more than enough to use on many different ridgelines in the game. It's 2 degrees less than the best, which is the Cent 51, 1 degree less than the M48, and then it is much better at 2 degrees more than the Object 165, so not too bad at all there. And you have the best gun elevation at 20 degrees, so not too bad at all. The gun isn't too bad for an autoloader, and that DPM, although it isn't as good as the single fire gun, it's not too bad for an autoloader, and you do have that nice 1280 damage once you have reloaded, and your gun handling is not too bad. The penetration's fine, shell velocity is fine, great mobility, it's just a little bit poor view range, and your hit points is fine. But we're going to have a quick look at what's changed between the Škoda and the TVP. So the Škoda's the tank you had before this tank. You grind through the Škoda and you get the TVP. Once you have unlocked the TVP and you have fully upgraded it, you have boosted your hit points by a good margin to 1900. However, your view range does go down by 10 meters to 440 for some reason. In terms of the mobility, it's pretty much similar, the same engine power. You have a slightly worse power to weight because you are a slightly larger and longer tank. Same top forward and reverse speed. Your hold reverse actually improves by 2 degrees a second, but your turret reverse does decrease, which you do have to boost up with your gun handling skills because that can catch you out. One more shot in your 100mm autoloader, your intra-clip reload improves to 1.71 seconds, and you deal your 1280 damage in 5.13 seconds. Your aim time improves by 0.1 of a second to 2.1 seconds. In terms of your accuracy, it stays the same at 0.35. I don't know why this is highlighted, that's from a previous thing, so we'll just cover that, and we'll delete my commander and equipment setup there. Obviously, I have chosen the wrong spreadsheet, but it's still the same stats. So in terms of the DPM, it has actually gone up, even though you have one more shell in your magazine. Of course, it's going to be a slightly longer reload at 33.4 seconds. In terms of your ammo capacity, you have 45 on your Škoda and 48, so you have 48 on your TVP, meaning it's gone up by 3. Same gun depression, same gun elevation, and your intra-clip reload, like I said, has improved by a little bit, by 0.09 to 1.71 seconds, so a good improvement there. The hit points is the main one, and also the extra DPM and the extra shell in your magazine, meaning you are definitely more of a fearsome predator on the battlefield. So that's it for the stats of the TVP T5051. Let's have a look at my command and equipment setup and what I decide to run on the TVP. Well, in terms of my equipment, I run gun stabilizer, improved ventilation and traction system, and in terms of my commander skills, I run 6th Sense, Born Leader, Rapid Loading, Steady Aim, Rapid Aim, Snapshot, Run and Gun, Armour Angling, and Track Mechanic. In terms of my equipment, I'm running that gun stabilizer to make my gun nice and accurate. Improved ventilation to improve my gun handling, the DPM, the view range, and everything about the tank. And I run traction system to improve my traverses just a little bit on the whole and make it a little bit faster, so I'm able to do some nice ramming damage to those pesky light tanks when they come and get you. And you can surprise them. You are a fairly hefty medium tank, especially the smaller medium tanks and light tanks in Era 1. You're able to ram for a substantial amount of damage. When I was grinding this tank, I chose to run advanced powertrain instead of the vents because the mobility with the stock engine isn't quite as good as you'd like it to be, but as soon as you get that better engine, then I'll switch out for vents in my opinion. In terms of the commander skill, 6th Sense and Born Leader is standard, rapid loading to help the DPM, all of the gun handling perks, armour angling because I use this crew on a heavy tank as well, but it can come in useful, meaning that your opponents can low roll a little bit more and you take reduced damage, and track mechanic because as an autoloader I don't want to be out in the open tracked. You could improve your traverses a little bit more by using some more commander skills that help the mobility, like off-road driving or clutch braking, but I decide to run this setup. So if you do run the exact same setup as me or one similar, you'll have a view range in the vicinity of 468 meters, so still not great. But again, like I said at the start of the video, I just invest it into the gun handling and the DPM of this tank. In terms of my mobility, I can now go 66 kilometers an hour forwards. I can now go 27.5 kilometers an hour in reverse, which is great for getting out of trouble. My hull traverse is now improved to 48.4 degrees a second, which is fantastic. And my turret traverse has now jumped up to 33.23 degrees a second. And while that isn't the best in terms of medium tanks in Era 1, it definitely helps and it doesn't catch you out as much as if you didn't use the gun handling skills. But yeah, definitely watch out for your turret traverse when you're trying to auto-lock and circle someone, or if you're trying to catch up with a fast moving tank. Just make sure your reticle is on the tank and definitely give plenty of lead. In terms of my gun handling then, I now have an aim time of 1.97 seconds, an accuracy of 0.23, which is absolutely fantastic. My DPM for a 4-shot autoloader isn't too bad now, 2,333. It wasn't too bad before, but that's pretty substantial change, and it means that you're able to reload this 4-shot autoloader in 27.77 seconds. So that's it for the stats of the TVP T5051. It looks like a very good ambush predator indeed. We'll have a quick look now at the armour profile. I'm just going to show you some screenshots and tell you because it doesn't have too much armour at all. The strongest part of the armour is 120mm on the turret, and it's relatively flat, so a lot of rounds are going to go through that. Even some higher penetration HE rounds and those HESH rounds will be able to penetrate the front of your turret. You have some armour which is 100mm on the side of your turret, and it's slightly angled, so sometimes if you're wiggling they might ricochet, especially some of the sort of bottom Era 1 tanks, but it's definitely not armour to rely on. In terms of your upper hull and quite a lot of your lower plate, 65mm, so lots of things are going to be buttering through that. And in terms of your side armour, 40mm, meaning that you can side scrape in this tank as long as you're side scraping against a tank that has a gun caliber of 120mm or less. If it's 121mm caliber gun or more, they will overmatch your side, and that's something to bear in mind when you're using something like the Object 268 or definitely the FE 4005 in Era 1. So that's it for the armour. Not much armour at all. It can occasionally ricochet off your upper plate and the sides of your turret, but definitely don't rely on it. So that's it for the stats of the TVP T5051. Let's head on in to the first of the 3 gameplays. So we're now into the first of 3 gameplays in today's video with the TVP T5051. We're on Halfaya Pass, which is a nice change. I haven't seen this map for ages. Don't see it all month, then you see it 10 times in one day, but that's typical WoT Tanks console things. So on Halfaya Pass we are defending an assault. It's an assault game mode, meaning it's a 10-minute battle. Just a little bit of advice for all of the newer players. When I was a newer player, I wouldn't take much notice of what kind of game mode it was, whether it was the encounter standard battle or an assault game mode. I would just rush forward and try and kill the enemy tanks, the same as I do now, but not taking into account the length of the battle or the fact that I can win just by surviving and not letting them capture the base. So definitely take that into consideration. In terms of this particular battle with the TVP, I am running the advanced powertrain still instead of the ventilation, meaning that my gun handling and my DPM will be slightly worse, but my mobility will be slightly better. So that's the reason for the slightly longer reload. However, it's still pretty good, and you can play it this way if you want. It's just my preferred way now to play with the vents. So we made sure we get one shell into that light tank there, just making sure we get a little bit of vision for our teammates that are all packed in that GH1 and 2 area of those 4 blocks on the grids there on the mini map. And now we're going to make sure we are reloading whilst we're moving to make sure we are fully loaded once we crest this ridge, and hopefully we're going to get a nice target. Fortunately, we find this T95E3, which is one of the most powerful tanks in Era 1. We're going to make sure we get all 4 shells in, and I'm happy to take 1 shell in exchange for taking a shell from him. However, we managed to get 4 shells with that really nice intra-clip reload before he's able to even turn around. So starting off this battle pretty well with 1.5k damage and 49 assistance. We knocked down that tree to block some view range in case people are trying to see us with the true vision system. We try and take out that light tank with a ram. As I said during the stats review, this tank is heavier than a lot of medium tanks, or the smaller medium tanks, and especially a lot of the light tanks, and it can be useful to take out the light tanks with a little nudge and keeping people tracked. So that's another tip in the TVP. And we're just trying to chase off these light tanks, because once we get rid of their vision, it should be an easy win for us, or an easier win for us to be able to defend this location without their vision. Again, whilst I was traversing the battlefield, making sure I was coming over to this side, I'm making sure I'm reloaded reloading whilst I'm moving, and I'm reloaded whilst I get into position, meaning that I'm able to dump my clip and then get back out. I'm sort of going backwards and forwards, trying to make it slightly less predictable where I'm going. I try and get a ram in here on this FV101. I chase him for a while and then think, what a stupid idea this is, I'm just making myself in the open, so I do turn around. We kind of chased him out of our base anyway, and now I can go back up to this ridge and support my heavy tanks. In terms of the gameplay and the game style I like to play in the TVP, you can see I'm supporting my heavy tanks. I'm getting forwards when I'm able to. I didn't notice there was a tank on its side there, so we instead turn around and get a shell into the tracks of the M103A1. Here I accidentally just go forwards there for some reason. I wasn't trying to push that guy. My controller tends to kind of like sometimes go into auto drive and sometimes just lag completely, and I'm not able to control my tank. So I'm sorry if I managed to get that TVP killed. It was completely unintentional. I was just trying to reverse round. I did pop the enhanced smoke screen, which I use on this tank, to make sure I can get away and reload, and that's the consumables that I run, as well as the large med and the large repair kit. So in terms of this game, it's quite a close game. We are behind by 1 tank, and I'm quite far forwards and I'm quite away from the base, so I'm going to try and circle back round, but I'm going to try and take out this T95E3 first. I'm constantly sort of spotted for the next section of the gameplay, and it's quite awkward because I'm trying to evade fire but also trying to think of the next best target and the best escape route. I know there's a little slope down here to my right, so I'm definitely going to use that to pick up some more momentum, make myself a little bit of a harder target, and come round the side and maybe take out this T95E3. I'm expecting him to be around this corner at some point. It looked like we did take a shot, but we did absorb a couple of shells, and now I'm expecting this T95E3 to be up here on this ridge. We lazily auto-aim the first. Second one, we're close enough it goes in, and we make sure the third goes in, and that's where having an autoloader is fantastic. Even though we did screw up the first shell, we have more than enough to take him out with 1 shell remaining, but we're going to go for the reload straight away to make sure we're reloaded for our next target. Unfortunately for us, the T95E3 comes after us, but you can see the fantastic mobility of the TVP here. I'm just picking up momentum going down the slope, and I'm going to wiggle, going around in a circle, making it slightly more unpredictable. I could have run away, but I just wanted to take this tank out and then come up behind the other 3 tanks that are left in the battle. I'm just going to pop my smoke here whilst I reload for a few seconds, and then I'm going to get moving in case people are coming after me, or the other 2 medium tanks are coming after me. I'm going to make it as unpredictable as possible where I'm going to come from, and I'm going to come up from behind in the centre of the map. So you can see the fantastic mobility of this tank. The reload isn't too bad at all, as long as you make sure you have support and you have hard cover. You have more than enough mobility to get away from quite a lot of the tanks in Era 1, apart from light tanks, whilst you're reloading, and the smokescreen can save your life. The view range doesn't hinder you as much as it would in World War II. So that's good news for the TVP. And now we're getting captured. There's the heavy tank in combat with our two medium tanks in E7. He gets taken out by our Centurion 5-1, and now we're going to head towards the base. I'm expecting the second enemy tank to go into the base at any point, so I'm making my way as quickly as possible, and you can see here that the mobility is absolutely great, and in this particular battle I was blessed to have the advanced powertrain, meaning I can get there with plenty of time to spare, and I'm just going to try and reset the base, and if I have to get one shell into one tank and one shell into the other to reset both of them, depending who has the capture points. We snapshot that TVP 88. I was checking what tanks were still alive, and their bottom sort of level era 1 tanks, and I wasn't concerned. So now we're just going for the tracks to dump our rest of our magazine, hopefully get some more assistance or take out the tank, and that's where the autoloader again is beautiful for those end game scenarios where you want to pick up the kills. So we finished MVP in that game with a profit of just under 100,000 silver, first class mastery badge, 1644 base experience points, 5 kills, 4.8k direct damage and 607 assistance. So a nice start there for the TVP T5051. Let's head on into the second gameplay. So you're joining me here in the second gameplay. We are 30 seconds into the battle. We're here on Redshire in the TVP T5051, and we've come to this location here in G5 where we have ridge lines to our sort of left and right and in front of us to hide behind whilst we are reloading. We see this FV101 come round trying to get early spot and damage. We managed to get 2 shells into him and a tracking shell, and we follow it up with another shell to take him out, and that's good, getting a very pesky light tank out at the start of this battle on a map which does rely on light tanks to get the view range out for your team. And whilst we're reloading, we're going to knock down some trees to create some more protection for us whilst we are reloading, maybe later in the battle, to make it harder for them to detect us whilst we are reloading. I thought I saw a shell there come in from the north of the map, so I'm going to pop up here on this ridge line, and yeah, there's T95 E3. I believe there's 2 of them there, and we're just going to try and get any shells we can into these tanks. And as you can see, long range, the APCR does have penetration drop off, so this is where heat rounds would definitely benefit you if you carry a magazine of them. It's just a shame with the autoloader that you can obviously quickly change your ammunition selection, so you can change between the APCR and the heat rounds, because you can never predict the next outcome with 100% certainty. So whilst we are reloading, I'm making my move, crossing a couple of ridge lines, and here you can see I push over whilst I'm reloading, and I'm going to use my weight to put some damage into that M46. We managed to do a nice sort of 300 and finish him off with 2 shells. I still have 2 shells left, and I'm going to crest this ridge. I'm going to put 1 into that M46. I was going to take him out, and then I nearly crapped my pants as I saw there's an FE 4005, but he fired at someone else just as we come round, and we blind fire a nice shell into him as we retreat, trying to reload. Unfortunately, the T54 does ram us, but we do a nice substantial amount of damage into him, and this light tank is chasing him and getting shots into him. Hopefully he won't be able to get one more shell into us. I'm just checking if the FE 4005 is aiming at me. Unfortunately, we managed to get the other side of this ridge line and were able to reload our full magazine. I was still getting lit up there, and it must have been this light tank who just sits there and allows me to get 4 shells into him, and you can see that fantastic intra-clip reload. We even set him on fire with the last shot, and in a very quick combat situation there, we picked up 4k direct damage and 430 assistance, and we blocked 240 damage, which is not too bad at all, and it's still a very close game. There's only 3 tanks in it. We are up by 3 tanks in this standard battle, so I'm just waiting on this ridgeline whilst I reload, and you can see that 8 degrees of gun depression is more than enough to use many different ridgelines, and we're going to try and get a nice sneaky shell into the enemy TVP. in very quick succession, we lose a lot of tanks and we're now behind by one tank. The TVP is a very dangerous tank like I am. Because of that autoloader, it means that you can just get obliterated in under 6 seconds. You're able to get taken out of the game if you're on low health, so definitely watch out for these tanks and the Škoda T50. They're very nasty, they have poor DPM, but they can be very dangerous against low health targets or for sort of half healthing some very dangerous tanks indeed. But we managed to take out that TVP there, and whilst we're reloading, we're going to try and get around to a different location. I said defend the base there, but I meant to say I was reloading, and then I correct that with the command wheel. So many times I've said defend the base when there isn't a base to defend, maybe if it's on like team destruction mode. They need to improve the radio wheel, or maybe it's just user error. But we are reloaded. We're making sure we're firing through foliage here, these overhanging trees, so it's going to be harder for them to spot us. I'm sat sideways on. I probably shouldn't be. I should be facing downwards because we have 20 degrees of gun elevation, meaning it's more than enough to get our gun up there and get shots into these T95 E3s. I didn't think I was going to fire within the next sort of 5 to 10 seconds, so I go for the reload. And now we're going to try and flank these two medium tanks to our right. This light tank looks like it's dealing with the medium tank to our left. And we're going to see if we can come up behind this T95E3, or I believe it's two T95E3s, and see if we cannot get 1 or 2 kills and some more damage at the end of the battle. I throw up my enhance smoke screen there, trying to just warn off that T95E3, maybe make him think I'm coming through the smoke when I come around this ridge line. We get spotted, but fortunately for us, he is going away from us. That's where the bad view range comes into play. He managed to outspot us through the tree, but we have the autoloader and we can put 3 shells into him, finishing him off for a nice 6k damage, 4k, 4 kills I should say, and 430 assistance with 240 blocked, a nice profit of 126,000 silver, and a decent result in the TVP T50-51. So now we're going to head on into the third gameplay. So again, you're joining me 30 seconds into a battle. We're now on Cao Bang in the TVP T50-51, and I've rushed forwards. I'm trying to get to these rocks straight in front of me, so I have nice side shots into tanks that are trying to make their way towards the south, but I'm also trying to protect myself from down the river. I'm getting forwards to get some nice view range out at the start of the battle for my team. You can play this slightly more aggressive like I am playing now, getting some view range out, getting forwards and being on the front line. You just have to make sure you have support behind you and you do have an exit route. So we're going to play chicken with a 268, which I definitely don't recommend, but we managed to get 3 shells into him, fire 1 blind, and then we're going to go for a reload. He popped his smoke. I was expecting him to come through again, so I am going to pop my smoke now to make sure that he's not able to spot me very easily if he comes through. And now we're going to sit here and reload. I'm trying to put hard cover between any tank that might be able to spot me whilst I'm reloading, and then as I'm nearly reloaded, we're going to try and acquire our next target. You're going to see me playing very aggressively in this game, like in the last game. You don't have to play this aggressively. You can play that passive sort of support role where you are supporting your heavy tanks. It does snipe fairly well at mid to long ranges, but you have that penetration drop off. But I like to play it highly mobile, getting forwards and making sure you're able to take out low health tanks, and within a short space of time you're able to make a very good impact on the battle. I spotted tanks behind me, but I'm going to rush forwards and try and flank all of these tanks that are fighting my friendlies that are sat towards the south. We're going to put 4 shells into this M47. I'm going to go for the ram to finish him off, but luckily the NM116 manages to take him out, and now we're using this ridgeline to reload whilst these heavy tanks and our teammates are in combat. We try and out-traverse this object 268. I didn't think it was going to happen, so I tried to juke him into shooting me as I rock backwards. Fortunately for us, we managed to glide past him there. We're nearly reloaded. I'm going to try and aim for his tracks, but 3 shells is going to finish him off anyway. I'm going to have 1 extra shell. I'm going to keep it because I know I'm going to fire within the next 5 to 10 seconds. And that's my kind of general rule with autoloaders, especially ones that have a roughly sort of 20 to 30 second reload and as many shells as I do. I'm going to try and make sure I'm reloading as effective as possible to keep my DPM as high as possible, but also to make sure I'm reloaded to take out any tank I need to when I next get to my next location. So we are already nearly reloaded, and we're playing very aggressively. It looks like we've won that sort of southwestern corner. We're going to pop back up here. I know there was tanks that I spotted where our light tank is in sort of D4. We find this charioteer. We're going to put 4 shells into him. We go for the drive wheel. He's tracked in place. We put our 4 shells in, pop our smoke, reverse out with a pretty nice reverse speed, and I'm hoping that my light tank was going to come round, flank him, and take him out. You can see that I'm not afraid to take a shot when I need to in the TVP or any autoloader. Trading is one of their best attributes. You can take 1 shell, especially if it's a lower caliber gun. I'm happy to take 200 to 400 damage in a game like this if it means I can take out 1 or 2 tanks or completely sort of cripple a very powerful tank and sort of turn the tide of the battle in my team's favour. We have 3 shells here, and we're going to pop them all into this T100, which has terrible gun depression. That's the word I'm looking for. And now we're going to be reloading with this destructible cover behind us. However, if the enemy tank does fire his single shot gun into this cover that's protecting us, I'm able to go forwards and go underneath the bridge and get out of harm's way. Fortunately, we managed to re-stealth, and we're just going to sit here whilst we're reloading and see if we can not get some nice shells into this Centurion too, and maybe take him out depending on how we roll with our damage numbers. But he's hiding behind this hard cover. I had a feeling that he was going to reverse out, and he does. We managed to get 1 shot into him. The second one tracks him. I try and get a third through his drive wheel, but there's just not enough showing. I believe the 4th shot might have actually gone through and damaged him, and now whilst we're reloading we're going to come under the bridge, and then we're picking our next target, I should say. We're coming around here, we're reloading whilst we're moving, so we don't have to think about just sitting behind cover. We can pick our next target, look on who's low health, who's on around sort of 1,000 to 1,500 health, because we have a good chance of taking out any tank that's on that much health. We notice this M48A5P1, take him out with 2 shells. We have 2 shells left in the magazine. It's coming towards the end of the battle, so I don't want to go for a full reload here in case I don't manage to fire again. We get 1 shell into that Centurion 2. We're going to go for another anagram to finish him off. But fortunately for us, the M103A1 on our team takes him down. I cheekily pop smoke there so that I'm the one that able to go forward and ram this tank to get the kill. I wouldn't do that if it was a close game. That's the probably cheekiest thing I've ever done in the last month in World of Tanks console, but you know, it gets us an extra kill. We get 4 kills, 5.5k direct damage, first class mastery badge again, 1,553 base experience points, 1,204 assistance, and a nice profit of just shy of 120,000 silver, I should say. And this is with the this game, I should say, was with the second gun package, so it's not the stock gun. So we do have the slightly worse DPM. However, we still managed to pull off this result, showing you that if you're patient and you pick your targets and your positions on the map carefully, you can have good results in the TVP T5051. But that's it for today's video. I hope that you have found this informative and or enjoyable. Thank you all so much for the support, and until next time, I'll see you on the battlefield, and bye for now.